Good day and welcome to the third day of the Analytics, Big Data and the Cloud Conference taking place at Fantasyland Hotel at West Edmonton Mall. Of course, it's hosted by the Alberta Council of Technologies, University of Lethbridge, and University of Alberta's School of Business. I'm your host, Rob Hislop. Right now, we're joined by the first keynote speaker of the day, Huijbregts. You're with CISCO.
That's right.
And your topic, it was kind of fascinating, talking about integrating communities, basically, with big data and such. Perhaps you can give us a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, the whole notion of of my talk was the fact that everything gets connected, and we've heard the data before. 50 billion devices will be talking over networks like the internet with one another, and it's not just people anymore. Of course, it's devices and systems and everything around us, everything that arguably can and is digital. And if we really kind of capitalize on the value of that, we can start to rethink how we deliver services and how we change life's experiences and how do we live in and learn and work in communities. Mm-hmm. And that, we believe, is really the foundation of how we're reinventing, if you will, the places that we live and the communities that we live in.
Well, just looking at your title, VP of Smart and Connected Communities, right. That has to be a relatively new, I would think, department within CISCO.
It is. We have been really focused on this maybe for the last 4 years. It really stemmed out of Asia, Far East, where new cities are being built almost every day, and large cities, 100 million square foot here, 1 million people there, to really kind of absorb the tremendous urbanization that's going on and the massive growth of our urban population. And the infrastructure that exists there today, and as a matter of fact in the Americas as well, is not sufficient enough and not capable really to accommodate this inflow of people to cities and to at the same time deliver competitive value for communities that are maybe older and already exist, so that they are arguably not be left behind. And for us to look at how this world comes together and how technology is really an aggregator, an enabler to deliver these new opportunities is a new and a very large opportunity for a company like ours and our partners.
Well, you're talking about company or cities in the other parts of the world, but you're also mentioning, today you mentioned St. Albert, which of course is a community close to Edmonton. What's happening there?
Yeah, so St. Albert is a 65,000 resident community just here a couple minutes away from Edmonton. They're expanding very fast. One of the developers there, Ramparts Avenir, has acquired 400 acres worth of land that is going to be home to about 10,000 new people over the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a long-term development. And as we look at this greenfield opportunity, certainly it's not like what we see in Asia in terms of its size and its scope, but at the end of the day, the people that live there are going to have the same expectations and the same requirements. So we've teamed up with a developer and working closely with the city as well to figure out how do we, from the ground up, build an infrastructure that is capable of delivering and creating new opportunities and services for the residents in this new community, but that flows in, obviously in St. Albert and into the region. So we look at this community and our involvement in this community as an opportunity to kind of create a blueprint for existing and smaller scale new community developments in the developed countries, the developed world.
Okay, is this something new for Canada or is this new in our area?
Well, it's new for CISCO in Canada. Okay. There's communities being developed and discussions around fiber to the home and bandwidth are not new. Mm-hmm. I think the innovativeness of this community is that, not to say it's not about the fiber to the home, it's an enabling, you need it to enable delivering new services. So we've kind of taken an upside down approach where we really start to redefine what it means to live in a community that is technology enabled. And that will drive the need for speed and the need for wires and the need for wireless and bandwidth.
So when you're talking technologically enabled, what does that mean to the average person? If I'm looking at moving to this area or just thinking about it, what will it mean for me?
Well, simple things that are the obvious ones we may come to expect is having ubiquitous connectivity to the internet wherever I'm in the bus, in the park, in the cafe, right? It's like one large hotspot, arguably, including in my home. I do want high quality of content in my home, and content is maybe moving from, let's say, old-fashioned TV to internet. More and more people watching movies and watching content over the internet. But then we kind of take that up to the next level and says, okay, how does maybe using video conferencing in the home allow me to interact with my doctor so that I don't have to go to the hospital or I don't have to sit in the waiting room? And how does it maybe allow me to consume content from an education perspective more efficiently, and I can actually participate in educational programs either in the region or in Canada or wherever, really, because the world becomes flat and we can connect with anybody, right? Obviously, the geography is interesting of Edmonton because of its relation to the north, where the oil sands are. How do we kind of make it easier for people maybe to live here and to communicate and to virtually interact with people that are further up in the north, and to really kind of create new ways of living and learning and playing and working in this community. So it starts to touch kind of every aspect, really, of what we do in a home. And frankly, I think it's already starting to become prevalent in older communities where the infrastructure isn't there, where people start to become more, demand more experiences, demand more services.
Well, I mean, you even see that through the cable companies, and they've got numerous different levels now of what you can expect as far as internet goes. Is this, I mean, you're talking about the community in St. Albert taking 10 to 15 years to develop. Is this a long-term thing, or is this something that you think has to happen relatively quickly?
Well, I think it's the new way of doing it. So is it long-term? Yes, I think it's just the new way of building communities and into the future. So yes, it is long-term. I think we don't develop new cities like in the Far East where we stamp new cities out of the ground, right? I think we're in a much more, if you will, conservative way of growing our country and growing our economy, and that's not a bad thing. We just have to, in everything we do, in the business processes, the business models, building and designing communities, we have to start to incorporate technology in these new ways of doing things. So I think, to your point, it has to start today. Like, we have to start to take this serious and not think, oh, we'll see what happens. This is not bleeding edge anymore. This may at times still appear leading edge, but frankly, when you look at a new community, the first people won't move in until 2 years from now. So if we don't think about these things today, 2 years from now, we know the world will look different. The expectations will be different, and we may find ourselves behind the 8 ball again. So we have to adopt the new processes. Hence, in my talk, we talked about new relationships and partnerships with the private sector, the public sector, and to really get organized and get ready to create these next generation communities.
Is the will there, or is there a little bit of a reluctance because it's new and it's different?
I think the will is there, but at the same time, there is a reluctance as to what does it mean for the established businesses that may be there and are used to delivering a service a certain way. I think with anything that is change and that is innovation, there's a hesitance, a nervousness maybe around it. But I think that onus is really on companies like us and our partners, for instance, and the community developers to really demonstrate the value. This is not about a lot of blinking lights and widgets that may overwhelm us. This is to make innovation kind of part of our lives and contribute and augment our lives without us necessarily knowing it, but do have the benefits from it.
When you talk about overwhelming, I mean, sometimes you look at all the new gadgets, new technology that comes out, and it's coming out so quickly, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. How do you recommend the average person try to cope with this and try to make some adjustments?
Well, our notion would be let's at least build the infrastructure so we can, on top of that, gradually roll out services anew, so it doesn't all have to come at once and be that overwhelming. Mind you, also, I think in the last 3 to 5 years, and maybe a company like Apple was really driving a lot of that, I think technology has become much more easier to absorb and to use. Like, we're not so much living anymore in the world where we have a VCR with a blinking light. Because
a reference I make often.
Yes. And that has changed a little bit because the use of technology has become so much easier. So I think as that becomes even more easier and really becomes part of everything and every part of our daily life, I think the absorption rate will be much quicker and faster too.
Okay. Because really those VCRs weren't that hard to program.
Yeah, they weren't. But you had to read through a book this thick.
Yes, absolutely.
Which now you buy a tablet device. There's no book with it anymore because you plug it in and it kind of works. And I think that's the world we need to have. That technology doesn't become an obstacle or it becomes something we have to get used to, but it just becomes an enabler to everything we do, and it's happening fast. I think.
Rick, thank you very much for your time.
you're
Rick
more than
Huijbregts,
welcome.
with CISCO. Don't forget, you can, if you missed part of this interview, you can catch it again throughout the day because we will be replaying the interviews, and we've got more keynote speakers for you as well. And you can, of course, catch the shows on fuselogic.tv, abctech.ca, and bestofanalytics.com. I'm your host, Rob Hislop.